Hey guys, I'm Chris,
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
and we're the Film Flamers.
And as your constant, we are here to shoot the flames at the start of August.
Well, it's our constant too because it's our anniversary.
It is.
I believe this is our sixth
It is.
year anniversary.
I know that I will no longer get the year wrong because I was looking at my Facebook memories today and I posted 6 years ago today that our podcast was coming out and you were putting the finishing touches on our episode to look out for it.
Oh my god.
Right. So it's almost anniversary date, but it was announced today, at least to my friends and family. But yeah, God, 6 years. I still remember recording Copycat though, like vividly remember that recording session.
I do too because there were so many outtakes just getting the intro in.
Do you remember how many times we had to start the fucking synopsis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was great.
We were just laughing for no reason. Like,
Yeah. We had like crossed over into delirium.
Now it's all old hat.
That's right. We just get in here and it's like business, silence, and then recording with still many, many minutes of outtakes, which y'all should look forward to later on this month.
Yeah, but it used to be at least one or two outtakes an episode. Now it's like one or two outtakes like every 6 months or something because we're just so professional now.
We're so efficient, really.
Plus, we just lean more and more and more into comedy as we have gone on, and so the outtakes are no longer outtakes.
You know, we're just getting really silly with our old age,
We are.
right?
Speaking of which, we should probably get on with it.
Okay, yeah. We don't have all night. We're old.
No.
Bedtime is 9. Can we talk about something though?
Yes.
We need to talk about like the whole slew of horror movies that have come out Midsommar.
Yeah, I feel like I even posted a meme about it. Like, it's like a buffet, and where do I start?
For real. I mean, like, I feel like you and I have not gone to the theater to see hardly anything this year. And then within a matter of weeks, we've seen like 3, 4, 5 movies. Well, you've seen way more than me, but
At this point, 2 more than you, yeah.
yeah. So, but like, my goodness. So like you and I saw A Quiet Place Day 1, and then we saw Maxine, and then we saw Longlegs, right?
And then we saw Twisters.
And then we saw Twisters, and like it was this like back-to-back movie releases that all seemed to be horror adjacent, and like they are just raking in the money at the box office because I was getting really worried about the horror genre the early part of this year.
I feel like it's a big box office return. People are just like, it's feeding everyone's like need or wants, I guess, to go to back to the theater, right? It's like all it needed was a string of good movies.
That's right.
And maybe even a 4 quadrant, right? Which they're calling Deadpool Wolverine, which is the world's first R-rated 4 quadrant film, meaning men, women, and above and below 40 for both.
Well, it's super popular. You know, how was that, by the way?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
need to see it.
some of the lines, I swear to God, like, and there's so many cameos, like I don't want to spoil it. You have to see it fast. Otherwise you can get some killer shit spoiled for you.
Well, fuck. Okay. I really, really wanted to see that movie.
The fourth wall is broken in like the best of ways and the best Hollywood Reporter kind of ways too.
Oh, fuck yeah. But I mean, like, A Quiet Place Day 1 has already, it's in the top 10 of highest grossing movies of the year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is crazy.
And Longlegs is now the #1 independent horror film of all time.
Of all time. Like, that seems insane to me.
Inexplicably.
I mean, I don't know what
It's good. It's just not. Yeah.
I mean,
Thanks to the marketing, I think.
no, the marketing was brilliant for that movie, and it paid off. Like, people went to go see it, and I don't know what their like reactions are to it because I don't think it's for everybody. But hey, you know. But I'm really grateful that these movies all came out because I was starting to get worried about the genre as a whole, and I'm like, well, everything's going to streaming right away. They're not having that many like theater releases anymore for things that aren't like tentpole type movies. But I feel like a movie like Oddity is proving us all wrong. Like, this is something that we could have seen at Overlook.
Right. And as usual, like is it a pattern where we missed the festival favorite or whatever?
Seemingly. Well, no, we saw it the year before.
Yeah.
But like this one, after the fact, we were like, how? Like, you know, this movie sort of came out of nowhere. And I thought, we'll catch it on Shudder. And then all of a sudden, it's got this like national theatrical release.
Which is odd. Well, it does, because it's like there was some bigger, better films like Red Room I feel like that a little bit bigger scale. This is very, very small scale. It feels like an elongated episode of the Tales of the Crypt, but it's very good as far as like taking you within an inch of your life, as far as like the Dolby shock or the jump scares, right?
Oh, right.
What's interesting is it's also kind of been a discussion lifeblood over on Patreon, because it's like everyone has been discussing all of the recent releases or current watches. And so a lot of the conversation is shifting from episode comments and into just the conversation that's happening over there on Patreon. So don't miss out and join the family.
For sure. I mean, like, a community has been created. Like, every time I open up that chat, I just see people talking with each other.
Talking about Oddity and Long Legs and Twisters and Lynn Powell, and all sorts of conversations are happening over there.
Well, we've even reached a point where people are commenting on other comments under episodes too, and that hasn't really happened a lot in the past. So I'm really happy about all that. And I'm happy about these movies.
Right.
And I'm glad that people are talking about them. So y'all, look forward to the end of the year, because we're going to have a fucking banger year-end episode.
All right. And speaking of all those comments, this is the episode where we discuss all of your comments, questions, concerns, ratings, reviews,
such and such,
etc., and give you all the latest news and trailers.
That's right.
So let's get started.
Let's do that right now.
Right meow.
From our Shooting the Flames episode from last month, which is July, was Nikki over on Patreon said, "Champing at the Mondegreen. LMAO, love it."
I've continued to say that.
It has entered your lexicon.
Yeah, instead of chomping at the bit, it is champing at the bit, and it is champing at the Mondegreen, because a Mondegreen is when you say something wrong, but pronounce it differently.
As explained in our next comment.
Yeah. Sinistero over on Patreon said, "Fun fact on Mondegrins, it comes from mishearing of the song Bonnie Earl O'Moray. The actual lyric is, they have slain the Earl O'Moray and laid him on the green. It was misheard as they have slain the Earl O'Moray and Lady Mondegreen."
I love to know where things come from. I like that tidbit. Nicole over on Patreon said, "Robert, I understand your bedtime American Dad thing. When I have insomnia, the only thing that helps me doze off is Seth MacFarlane's voice. I think it's the tone. I spent most of my first pregnancy unable to sleep until I discovered the nightly Sethathons on various cable channels."
Nice.
Well, I mean, I fall asleep to lots of things. Like, I kind of like go back and forth between like Golden Girls or American Dad or The Simpsons, right? But I get it. It's like the tone of his voice, and then just like listening to things play out. I don't even watch it. I just listen to it and fall asleep. It's amazing. Also, I fall asleep to the dulcet tones of Forensic Files more often than not.
Yeah, I think that's fairly basic as well.
Yeah. Well,
or normal, rather.
I'm a basic. I was like, well, I am basic, so it's fine. I feel like Chris many a time has had to listen to.
I have to listen to like dry, dusty, like fantasy lore podcasts.
But there have been Airbnbs that we've stayed in that have very like sound carrying walls, and you've heard my fucking like true crime shows like playing in the background.
Yeah.
Murder.
It's like David Attenborough, but instead of nature, it's murder.
That's right.
From our top 10 disaster movies episode, Nikki over on Patreon said, "Another great list, and inspired me to watch ID4 with our oldest child after having watched Twister and Twisters this weekend. I must say, ID4 was prime Jeff Goldblum. His swagger walk at the end was fire."
Yes, ma'am. When has it never been prime Jeff Goldblum? I think he's always in his prime. Jessica E. over on Patreon said, deep impact any day. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Be second.
Ryan over on Patreon said, "Lots of new films I need to try and watch. I know I plugged it in the chat, I think on a comment, but Titanic is very much horror adjacent. I again will plug another podcast on Spotify, Titanic Scene by Scene, for those that want a very detailed and informative deep dive of that movie. They also explain the horror adjacency of it. Thank you for a great episode." Well, I'm glad we're not the only ones.
That's right, because I'm sure we will be doing a Titanic deep dive at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Rosie Red Leader over on Patreon said, "I wanted to share this anecdote that is about Edith Head, not disaster films, LOL. My mom has this story where she went to either a fashion or sewing event where Edith Head was at. While my mom was in line for something, Edith Head walked by, saw the clothing sketches my mom made and was holding, and came over and drew some ideas she would incorporate into my mom's design next to her sketches. My mom still has those sketches with Edith's additions and autograph." That's fucking amazing. Like, I wish that I could have just seen Edith Head for a minute and like made her make me something to wear, because my God, we watched Airport, and that woman can make a coat.
Bennett over on Patreon said, a few thoughts to share upon listening to this episode. I've said it before, but definitely pick Deep Impact over Armageddon any day. I don't love it like you guys, but my feelings towards it are nothing compared to my absolute hatred of the latter. Sort of Deep Impact is Hillary Clinton against Armageddon is Trump. Sorry, had to go there. Go read my Letterboxd review if you haven't already. The editing alone was so fucking horrible, it traumatized me for life. Michael Bay couldn't keep focused on a shot for more than a split second for his fucking life. Countless editing choices and continuity errors I have been dying to point out to folks.
My goodness.
Well, maybe we should deep dive it just so we can shit on it.
For real.
But we don't like to do that here at the Film Flamers.
No, we like things we like to watch.
Yeah.
I've only seen segments of the Poseidon Adventure, but I have watched Poseidon, the 2006 remake, and I agree it's horrible. Although a great example of how not to write a disaster flick, where instead of introducing multiple characters to empathize with, you just that guy and that girl, and oh shit, the wave just hit 15 minutes in, and I don't care about anyone in it. Although Richard Dreyfuss playing a gay guy in a big disaster film made during the Bush administration was a bold choice. Don't know if it was tasteful, but points for effort.
I hated that movie.
Same.
I would love to hear you cover Spielberg's War of the Worlds. I, too, really liked it when it came out, since it creeped the hell out of me at times. But for whatever reason, everyone knew seemed to hate it. Whatever.
We did not.
We did not hate it. In fact, we are going to cover it probably with ID4.
That's right. I also just rewatched ID4 for the 4th of July. That was a family tradition for me growing up, and yes, it still holds up pretty well. Although I'd argue it's Roland Emmerich's masterpiece. The Day After Tomorrow was just too silly for me overall, but 2012 was so deliriously silly, I can still enjoy that one too.
You have to see that one.
I am chomping at the fucking mondegreen to watch 2012.
Do you mean Champing?
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry, Nikki Champing. Because you've been talking about it, and I was just like, all right, I feel like I've seen a lot of disaster movies, but somehow didn't watch this one, and now I feel like I just have to.
I mean, Woody Harrelson as a hippie that's waiting for the super volcano to blow up? Yes, please.
I mean, I'll take it.
Flying an airplane through the continent, breaking in half, with subway trains like flying overhead over the fucking airplane.
I just have to. I'm assuming that you would watch this with me on your side.
Yes.
Okay, good. Done and done. It's happening.
From our deep dive into Twister, Nikki said, wait, Robert doesn't like Minority Report? Interesting. Another great episode, fellas. Wow, I felt the judgment.
Bennett replied, oh my God, I gasped when I heard that too. I love Minority Report.
Nikki said, me too.
I stand by it. I don't like Minority Report.
I watched it once and I thought it was like meh. So maybe I need to revisit.
I mean, I would watch it again. I've only seen it the one time, but I was like hideously bored watching it.
Yeah, maybe we should revisit. Okay.
But gasped?
Gasp. Clutched their pearls.
Loosen the clutch on your pearls. I will watch it again and we'll report back.
Battle Breed over on Patreon said, I never want to hear the word Nader ever again. Kimberly even said, say Nader one more time.
My work here is done.
Nader.
Okay. Fun fact. Sometimes when writing a synopsis, I will write something and I will laugh at it so much because I know that Chris will have to read it. And so using the word Nader over and over again was funny to me.
Into the Nader.
I really expected you to have more of a Southern accent when you said it, but it's okay.
I kind of did.
Yeah, you did.
At the beginning.
And then like boat jargon. I mean, it's not like I'm using synopses as a weapon. It's really just for my enjoyment on the other side of the table.
Well, we both use them as a weapon. Let's keep it real. Nina Hyena from Instagram said, can't wait to listen. I'm from Oklahoma, and this movie is basically our blueprint. I was lucky enough to ride the Twister attraction at Universal Orlando years ago. And let me say, putting Jimmy Fallon to replace it was a big mistake. Huge. Much love.
There's a Jimmy Fallon attraction at Universal Studios?
I don't want to know that.
That makes me want to die inside.
Yeah.
Kyle over on Instagram said, come for me. LOL. Such a great episode. Thank you, Kyle.
Devastate my town.
I was really proud of those like porn lines.
From our Patreon poll, to choose the 90s disaster movie, which ultimately, of course, was Dante's Peak, random guy over on Patreon said, I'm voting for Volcano because it's the only film on this list I've never heard of. And I feel like a lot of people love that sentiment, including us.
That's right.
Right? Which is the attitude that I think all of us should have. But
right.
Alas, we like our comfort blankets.
James over on Patreon said, vote Independence Day because it's awful and I want to hear Chris shit on it.
I enjoy Independence Day.
As it turns out, James, he would not have shat on it.
I don't like shitting on anything. Wallstritch over on Patreon said, tight race between Dante and Independence. Meanwhile, Volcano voters could tip either one over the line. Volcano is the RFK Jr. of this poll.
Too soon. Gia over on Patreon said, I voted for Dante's Peak because it's such rewatchable, trashy fun.
It's not trashy.
No, it's not trashy.
It's just trash. But I love it. Nicole over on Patreon said, this was tough because Volcano and Dante's Peak are among my fave comfort trash. Like snuggly lava blankets.
Well, y'all.
Watch The Core. Everyone needs to watch The Core.
I've never seen The Core and I never will.
Oh my God. Why?
Because I hear it's awful.
No, it's good.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, there's 2 disaster movies.
Hilary Swank and then Stanley Tucci stuck in a tube together.
We're going to have to do a 2012 Core double feature, apparently. Y'all, it was Dante's Peak was the winner, and that bonus episode is out. So go listen to it.
From our bonus hot take into stage fright, which I apologize for, Rosie Red Leader over on Patreon said, how do you list horror musicals and forget Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street?
Because I always forget Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I mean, it's a good musical, but I never think about it when it comes to horror musicals. Just don't. Alex over on Patreon said, somehow think of the unholy algorithm of the worst of Glee and Scream Queens, but then remove any sort of charm or wit that could have somehow remained. Too many different directions for what they may have wanted for this movie that ended up in a messy dead end. Happy Pride.
Agreed. Stage fright is not great.
Talk about a fucking trash lava blanket.
I would much rather watch Sweeney Todd.
It is stage fright. You're right. God.
Glazed Donut over on Patreon said the problem with horror musical like this is that it never fully gives you what you want because both genres are so strong on their own that to combine them, you have to dampen the spirit of one to show the other. The film feels disjointed and tension is hard to hold on to because the characters are breaking out into song. I watched this and then De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, another horror musical comedy, both of which I had never seen, and I enjoyed De Palma's a lot more because the storyline and music felt more cohesive and it was actually entertaining. Maybe in the right director's hand, a horror musical is achievable. I think so, right? Yeah. Phantom of the Opera can work because it's all kind of mostly like diegetic, you know? Mm-hmm. There's ways to do it, but you have to know what the fuck you're doing.
And I feel like movies like Little Shop of Horrors is a really good example of like blending the horror and the comedy and the music sort of together in a really good way, you know?
And maybe not necessarily like horror adjacent, but you always have trouble, like especially modernizing and making musicals today. And one of the best examples I feel like in the last 20 years has been Chicago, right? Because it's all like inner monologue, you know, it's all like in their mind for the most part. It's all representative of conversations and things like that.
And it worked for that movie.
It really, really did.
You know, but it's really hard to pull off. However, Phantom of the Paradise is really, really good. And I'm kind of kicking myself for forgetting about that movie when we recorded about Stage Fright and listing all these things that we liked or disliked. But that movie is excellent, Glaystone. I'm glad you liked it. From our bonus episode on High Tension, Nikki over on Patreon said, so glad we watched this. I just let go of all the plot holes because it pulled me all the way in. My hubby said the same about the Jeepers Creepers van. The fun fact about the actress being in The Fifth Element made me smile, sans the pedo part.
Right.
I love The Fifth Element and was shocked to hear that was the same actress.
I know.
Right?
Fun facts.
Fun facts abound.
Deep dive into Heather's. Rosie Red Leader over on Patreon said, I think the anecdote about Heather Graham is interesting as just a couple of years later, barely into adulthood, she starred in Twin Peaks in some horrific moments.
She was in Twin Peaks. Did I forget this?
Yeah. Well, the fun fact I think was Heather Graham was very young and she auditioned to be one of the Heathers.
That's right. That was a deep, deep comment from a deep dive from years ago, or maybe last year. I can't remember. From our Shooting the Flames episode from last June, Kimberly said, I would totally come to your booth and fangirl all over you guys. Yes, I'd even go to Texas for it.
Oh my God.
Well, that will probably never happen, but I'm glad that a handful of y'all would come and say hi.
I wonder if it would actually like be more convenient to have a booth at one of these stupid conventions. Because then we could get in before everyone and not have to do the stupid line or whatever. And then we'd have like a home base.
We'll just make our own live episode from our booth. Like we don't We don't need a theater full of people. People could just walk out and be like, what are y'all talking about? Like, don't interrupt. Okay. God.
From our top 10 jump scares, Kimberly over on Patreon said, Sinister, scariest movie ever? Snooze fest. I've watched it 3 times and I still think it's awful. The demon character just looks like some dude with a Halloween mask on. The sequel's hot garbage. Honorable mention to the library scene in Ghostbusters. When I was 8 years old, my babysitter took me to see it in theater. I love the movie, but that scene made me scream loud enough to make people look at us.
So Ghostbusters was recently on the television, where I was in a room with the TV on, and I was watching parts of it, and I caught that library scene at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it is a really good jump scare because it comes out of nowhere in a horror comedy. And so, yeah, I would say that's effective.
It doesn't even become a horror comedy until later on. Like the first Ghostbusters movie, I feel like holds on to the drama of it until a good 30 minutes in, at least. Mm-hmm. From our top 10 horror comedies, Glazed Donut over on Patreon said, I think in my foolish youth, except for Rocky Horror, I took a serious approach to horror films and excluded the horror comedies, missing out on a lot of great films. The last few years have provided an appreciation for the genre. I mean, aren't we all living in a horror comedy right now?
Yes. And
I'm beginning to understand that there were always comedic elements in horror films and horror comedies, just bring a little more of the intentional comedy to the table. I've seen some of these movies on the list, but I'm planning to get them all crossed off the list. Sometimes you just need a little more laughter with your killing. Well, go check out our top 10 horror. Wait, that was the comedy. No. Definitely check out those movies and let us know what you think.
For sure. There's
There's
a lot of good stuff on there. And, I mean, I've always liked horror comedies. I know Chris does too. That's why we do this yearly, right? Because I think we just like to laugh.
I still think more people need to see Student Bodies.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of people who were born after the fact, like, really need to go back and check it out.
Especially like watching things like Black Christmas and, you know, seeing what it was really actually making fun of more than what you would expect.
You really have to have an appreciation for a slasher movie to like love that movie. And I think a lot of our listeners do, but may not have seen this one. Definitely check that one out, Glazed Donut. Nikki over on Patreon also commented on this older episode, and she said such a great list. I love so many movies on it. And Madeline Kahn is amazing in Young Frankenstein and in Clue. She deserves that shout out.
You do need to see Young Frankenstein still.
I know. That's like still a glaring, gaping hole.
Yeah.
In my filmography.
From our Shooting the Flames episode back in June 2019. My goodness, I think this is one of the first times we've ever gotten a comment on a previous Shooting the Flames episode.
Yeah.
This far off. Nikki over on Patreon said, we watched High Tension on your recommendation, and that was a fun ride. Woo! Now I'll go look for Crawl, which is the actual movie you were discussing. So many delightful nuggets. Yeah. I need to go back and listen to some of our shootings because we do talk about hot takes and different things that I forgot about. And Crawl was one of the things that we really enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time, listeners, for those of you who haven't heard past Shooting the Flames, where we had a whole ending segment where we talked about our recent watches and stuff like that we just don't really do anymore.
Especially during 2020 and earlier, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
From a Hot Takes episode, something else that we don't do very often. This was a Hot Takes episode on Us and the Pet Sematary remake. And Nikki over on Patreon said, I'm sure I've already heard this podcast episode and might have commented on it before, but it made me want to rewatch this movie. Also, hearing Chris didn't like the joke about a key and a rock made me pause. I'm curious to hear why that bothered you. That was a joke for Black movie watchers because we say that. And then that made me think of the movie The Blackening, which is definitely for Black folks. If you didn't like the joke in Us, you definitely wouldn't like The Blackening, and that is totally okay because it is a horror comedy for the Black community. Glad that we have a community to have this conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. I think maybe... I don't know if it was the joke specifically, but if I recall, it was just like, I don't know, anything that kind of makes me feel bad about myself. I don't appreciate. I got enough of that in real life, you know, as a gay man, you know. So I don't know. Maybe something stuck in my craw, but I still really love that movie, you know, and especially the performances.
The acting in that movie is fantastic. And honestly, I haven't gone back to rewatch Us, and I don't remember that joke. Yeah. So like, this is something that we need to watch again.
I remember liking it when it came out, but I think I like it more now. Right. So
I'm sure that I would after some like space and time.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But yeah, that's right. I mean, some movies are not made for me. Right.
For sure. I mean, I've seen The Blackening and I liked it. I thought it was funny. I gave it highest rating on Letterboxd. But like when watching the movie, I was just like, this movie really wasn't made for me, you know, and that's okay. Yeah. Right. I got some of the jokes. I didn't get some other ones, but it was still like an enjoyable movie. And I appreciate the fact that it exists. Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like all the old white guys complaining about Captain Marvel or something, and Brie Larson was like, this movie was not made for you.
Exactly.
And they got all pissy.
So, you know, I mean, some things are just not for everybody.
From our bonus entrails of a scene. Wow, when we did entrails of a scene.
Right.
World War Z and the Burbs. Nikki over on Patreon said, I was surprised and heard y'all poo-poo World War Z in earlier episodes, so it was great to hear the positive notes on this film, which I really liked. I read the book a couple years ago and agreed that I can't see how they would have done it like the book. And I really like the entrail segment concept. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Yeah, we would pick a scene from a horror movie. And I think my World War Z was the Jerusalem scene, which is just still one of the best zombie scenes ever put to film, in my opinion. One of the most tense.
And I think, like, when it comes to poo-pooing World War Z, I think it's mostly me on that, just because I love the novel so much.
Well, if they'd waited 10 years, I feel like they would have probably made it, and will probably still make it into a mini-series, which is a lot more close to what it could be in the book.
And I am forever holding on to that. But this got me thinking about Intros of a Scene and how long it has been in this anniversary month episode of Shooting the Flames. And I was just like, wow. I mean, maybe we should go back and revisit some of these bonus segments that we used to do as a change of pace.
You know, we were kind of just seeing what would stick, what we would enjoy, and what audiences would enjoy. And we didn't get a lot of feedback back then. And I think that like the awards that we would do, we did it for fun, you know, and it's just like, we don't super enjoy the contention of putting, you know, people up against each other. We're combining even our top 10s more and more these days.
Yeah.
And like the hot takes, we like to go see movies because we want to, not out of obligation. Right. Sure. And so we're just doing things that are stuff that really kind of scratches our creative itch and also is enjoyable and kind of stress-free for us. And so I don't know. I think we'll definitely have some we're ripe for a hot take with all of these fucking movies coming out, but we're kind of saving that for our reviews. We do really, extended kind of year review.
That's true.
Right. And we do talk about some things, like maybe at the front loaded into the Shooting the Flames, like today, we talk about a few of the things that we did see. So
yeah, you get a little bit of that.
A little bit. And we did pepper in our hot take of Twisters in our deep dive of Twister, if you missed it.
Oh my gosh. I still can't wait to talk about that movie at length at the end of the year, though. From our Shooting the Flames episode of April 2019, Nikki over on Patreon said, loved the rant. Keep doing those and love to hear what you were watching. Also, I had to comment on the Into the Spider-Verse review, but I can't remember which episode that was on, so I'll just put it here. Love that movie, but Miles Morales is Afro-Latino. Calling him black isn't necessarily incorrect, but the movie does a great job of showing both his Puerto Rican mother and black father, so I needed to comment on that. That family has so much flavor that it adds to the movie. I had to mention it.
100%, yeah.
Did you just rewatch this?
No, I watched Across the Spider-Verse, which is the sequel, which is some of the best animation that's ever put to film. Yeah. Just amazing. From our deep dive into Fatal Attraction, Nikki over on Patreon said, another thorough look at a great movie. I love hearing the progression of your podcast. In this episode, you announced the start of Shooting the Flames, which I always look forward to. Also, I keep waiting to hear the come through, daddy clip when you do the hottest guy. What I need to figure out is how I can use AI to create a list of all the movies I'll mention. So many suggestions that I need to check it out. I can't keep up.
My gosh.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I didn't respond to something in the last one. Or did we? Love the rant. You mentioned a rant earlier in the last comment. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what we ranted about. Maybe in 2019 we were talking about... No, I don't know what we would have been talking about.
I need to go back and look that up for sure, because we were using Shooting the Flames. I wonder if it was
the Captain Marvel shit.
Possibly.
Because it just fucking said that.
We were using Shooting the Flames for a lot of things back then. Like, it was crossing off a lot of boxes because we didn't have as many comments as we do now. You know, we had a handful, and so we would fill the episode with other things, including just rants on stuff. You used to have a whole mic drop like sound effect that you would like use, right? So there's no telling. We were ranting about a lot of shit back then, pre-Pandy.
Pre-Pandy.
I'm gonna open this beer. From our bonus episode, the Brightest Flame Award for Best Actor, Nikki. You're becoming quite the historian, Nikki. She says, Bruce Campbell wins this one. As much as I love Sir Christopher Lee, he is much more than a horror actor. Bruce is the iconic horror hero, Groovy.
You know, and then I kind of like doubled down on this take after I finally saw Christopher Lee in the fucking cult movie.
Which cult movie?
That Midsommar is based off of, basically.
Oh, The Wicker Man.
Wicker Man, yeah. And I saw him again and yet another, like he has the biggest filmography in human history, I believe, like some sort of record, right? And most of those are horror, you know? And so I was trying to do like a technical thing. Like, so I came from, that was very, very indicative of our early years in this podcast, which is me coming from a very technical place and Robert coming from a very kind of like empathetic or even spiritual place with like the colloquial understanding of who the best horror actor is, which of course is Bruce Campbell.
Well, and this is what makes our podcast good, in my opinion, and why I think that we continue to want to do it this many years in, is that like you and I have conversations about movies all the time, on mic and off. And we just watch movies from a different kind of place. And I think that's interesting.
But it's interesting that we have actually met a little bit more in the middle, because I'm a little bit more empathetic now and you're a little bit more technical.
That's right.
And our ratings used to be about a point off, and now they're about half a point off almost always.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like interesting that we kind of started to kind of overlap a little bit in the way we view things, which is the whole point of conversation, right?
I mean, we are just moments away from me in the middle of a film going like, listen to that score.
And I'm moments away from saying, small cast, single location, sign me up.
We'll really get to know these characters now.
From our deep dive into Rosemary's Baby, Nikki, our historian, said, so glad I'm going back to the archives. Great episode. This movie scared the crap out of me as a kid, and I only saw it on network TV, so I didn't see the full movie until about 10 years ago.
I love Rosemary's Baby.
I bet this hits very different for a child and then as an adult, especially an adult woman.
Who has children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much. And
I'm sure we probably talked about that in our deep dive.
I'm sure we did. Because I know like Nikki and Nicole and others have talked about like what it's like to watch horror movies as a parent, you know, as a mother. And I think that's a super interesting conversation to have.
Oh, yeah. We've had that conversation several times. Yeah. Several people weighed in about like, especially when they were pregnant and how they couldn't, like their body just like would not let them watch horror.
That's another reason why I like to have this podcast, is because we get to like people's, just the way that they consume horror movies and how it affects them in different parts of their lives. I just think from a sociological standpoint, that's super, super interesting.
Yeah.
Also, Nikki, the prequel for Rosemary's Baby is coming out this year, and I cannot wait to watch it.
I really wish it was directed by Akasha Stevens, I think is her name, the First Omen. I don't
She'll
know
have
who's
other
directing
things.
this, but I'm excited. We got some questions. Skylar over on Facebook said, thank you so much for reading my message on your podcast. Once I heard, I was straight cheesing at work for the next hour or so. And it's coming to the point where I listen to about 5 or 6 of your episodes a day, and I'm starting to run out. I've heard so many funny comments. I can hardly recall every single one. I would have to say Teaching Mrs. Tingle was absolutely hysterical. Forget what that was.
Do you think you said Touching Mrs.
Touching Mrs. Tingle. Yeah, that's right, because Teaching Mrs. Tingle was actually a thing. I also got done listening to most of your episodes about Alien and Aliens. Those have been 2 of my favorite movies since I was 6 years old. I've recently gotten to a new hobby, and I think you guys would really appreciate what I've been doing. Here are shots of my 4 Alien 1979 dioramas that will span from 4 foot wide to 2 foot deep and about 1.5 feet high. I would love to hear your thoughts, and as always, I will continue to listen daily. Sweet dreams.
So I have reached out to Shyler and asked if we can share some of the photos that he sent of his dioramas on Instagram. So as soon as he gives me permission, I will do that. But they look really, really cool. Like he's taking certain scenes and is really like recreating that environment in kind of like a miniature kind of sense. Like think Hereditary, right? And they look really fucking neat. So
is it Skylar or Shyler? I think it's spelled Shyler, but I said Skylar.
I don't know. I've only seen it written.
Let us know.
Send us a voicemail. Nico Allred over in the Patreon chat said, Chris and Robert, have you guys ever considered deep diving Summer of Sam? I love that movie, and it's not just because Adrian Brody is so damn hot in it, but oh my God, does it ever help? I mean, we've talked about that movie before.
I don't get it about Adrian Brody. I know that he Benedicts some people's Cumberbatch, but not me.
I have a thing for a nose. So I mean, like, yeah. So I mean, that's why I like Adrian Brody, but also he was in a random Tori Amos music video. I love The Summer of Sam. I think that it's a really, really good movie. I think it's a really interesting way to make a movie about a serial killer that's really not about the serial killer, you know?
Yeah.
It's more about the hysteria around it. And I think that'd be a really fun conversation. But trying to find a way to like sort of fit that into a docket may prove difficult unless we were doing another like true life serial killer movie. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we would consider for sure. I don't know that Adrian Brody would make the hottest guy list in that movie though, because there's other hot guys in that movie. But hey,
we didn't get any voicemails this time around.
None?
As far as I know. And if there was other emails, I don't know because our email shut down. I didn't find out about it until like an hour before we started recording. So I'm going to try and fix that tonight. I don't know if there's any emails that still exist in the email verse, but if you sent us something and we did not respond or read it or anything like that, then in the latter half of July, that's because our email shut down. We didn't even know it.
We will get to them. We promise. Yeah. But we have a new patron. Kyle Kavanaugh has rejoined the Patreon family at the Firestarter level. So welcome back, Kyle. And thank you for that come from me comment from Twister. But we have to shout out our patrons at the Film Flamer tier or higher.
And we'll start off with our Inferno people, and that is Lestat.
And Penelope.
And William Harris. And the Film Flamer tier or higher is Anthony.
Ashley.
Ben.
Cinnabite Betty.
Glazed Donut.
Jessica.
Lisa.
Nikki.
And Random Dude.
Rosie Red Leader.
Sinistero.
Wallstritch.
And William Skinner.
Thank you guys for the continued support over on Patreon.
But especially Nikki.
Nikki.
Our historian.
Oh, you're right. Especially Nikki. All right. I don't care if you're using AI, but I am just awaiting the day for like the Film Flamers history to be published.
Like everything we've ever, early days, I tried to mention and put in the show notes, everything that we would mention. Mm-hmm. So if you check the show notes, some things might be there. Who knows?
I like to think that I remember, like I can sort of like look back in my mind, which has an amazing way of just like remembering like minutia and bullshit. Mm-hmm. Just be like, oh, we've talked about this person like X number of times on the podcast, so on and so forth. But now, 6 years later, it's getting a little hard.
Yeah. My brain no good.
Yeah.
Horror news.
So one of our favorite horror movies so far this year has already been announced to have a sequel on the way. And that is the sequel to In a Violent Nature.
I don't know how I feel about this.
I feel excited about this.
Okay.
Just because I feel like that movie was kind of a meta way to talk about a slasher, and there's an equal amount of ways to do meta sequels, right? Things that Scream has already done in a more straightforward way, you know, but like sequels have their own rules and easy ways to like film a movie like this.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's a change in setting.
Yes.
You know, so I'm hoping it's that, but there is more to do. I just don't want it to be like a continuation of the campgrounds.
No.
You know, because that just feels like, okay, well, that could have been in the first movie.
I kind of need In a Violent Nature Takes Manhattan.
Exactly. I agree. Next up, we've got The Long Walk. So Stephen King movie adaptation expands cast as filming begins. So it's officially happening.
And that's the only reason I really put this in there is because like this is one of my favorite, if not favorite, Stephen King works. And I thought it would never have a film, and it's happening. And the cast that they've expanded is a whole bunch of people that I have no idea who they are. So that makes me feel old that I don't know these people, but also I'm just really excited to see this movie brought to film. Like finally. Yeah. I hope to God they don't kill it.
Next up, we've got King Spawn from Jason Blum. who's teasing a new screenplay for the long-awaited Spawn movie. And why it has to be King Spawn, I don't know. And why it has to be Jason Blum, I really don't fucking know.
Yep. So I saw this and I was just like, oh, hey, Chris likes Spawn and he really liked that movie. But you know who he doesn't like these days? Jason Blum and his production company. So it's just like, what are your thoughts on this, Chris? Do you want to rant?
No, I just don't care.
I know, for real.
I just don't.
I don't know why it has to be Blumhouse, like honestly, but apparently they're doing this.
I don't know. I think they're trying to claw back into a little bit less trash, right? So we'll see what happens.
They're gonna have to try real hard.
Now I know it's your turn, but I really need to talk about The Terror.
I know you do. And when I saw that you put this on the docket, I was like, I need to make sure that Chris has some time to talk about this.
So The Terror Season 1 told the story of a British naval expedition stuck in the ice while searching for the Northwest Passage. And then later there was a second season titled The Terror Infamy, which came out just a year later, actually, and followed Japanese Americans who were put into the internment camps during World War II as kind of a haunting story. So that one was good, really good, but it wasn't as good as the first, which is kind of some of the best horror TV I've ever seen. And still, it's almost like, some really great historical storytelling, historical drama, and then also survivalist horror and also monster horror. And it's still something that I'm begging and pleading Robert to watch it eventually, and I'll rewatch it with him because it is just so good. Anyway, it's been announced that season 3 is happening over on AMC, and it's called The Devil in Silver. And AMC has cast Dan Stevens, horror royalty, in the lead role. So he'll play Pepper, described as, quote, a working class moving man who, through a combination of bad luck and bad temper, finds himself wrongly committed to New Hyde Psychiatric Hospital, an institution filled with the people society would rather forget. There he must contend with patients who work against him, doctors who harbor grim secrets, sounds like American Horror Story, yep, and perhaps even the very devil himself, also sounds like American Horror Story. As Pepper navigates a hellscape where nothing is as it seems, he finds that the only path to freedom is to face down the entity which thrives on the suffering within New Hyde's walls. But doing so may prove that the worst demons of all live inside him. And that sounds like Legion, at least the first couple of episodes, where he was literally possessed with the Shadow King who was killing people in an asylum.
So are they totally abandoning, like, going to actual history and finding the horror in it?
I don't know. That's yet to be revealed.
Okay.
But whatever this is, has really attracted a lot of talent, including Dan Stevens, right? But Karen Kusama is executive producing this and directing the first 2 episodes herself. Ridley Scott and David Zucker are executive producers for this season.
That's huge.
And added to the cast is Judith Light, CCH Pounder.
Yes.
And Stephen Root.
Okay. All right. I mean, it seems like this whole franchise now is going in a really different direction. Although, I mean, like, if you're going to look from a historical standpoint, like psychiatric facilities in their heyday and what would eventually like bring down their downfall could be part of the history in this, you know?
Yeah. And I think there is a history, especially in America, right? During that, I would assume that this is going to be during, anywhere from the teens to the 1940s or something, right?
Yeah.
And kind of Shutter Island-y, right?
I mean, it sounds really, really interesting. It does sound a lot like American Horror Story, but American Horror Story these days is not very good.
They tried to do too much. They tried to do serial killer, they tried to do devil and possession, and they did aliens all in that one season.
That's right.
So this is going to be a little more specific, I think.
And I would agree with that. So, but you had me at Karen Kusama. Canadian Matt 3, which is a Patreon member who put something into our chat, reminded us that Twister's Glenn Powell is attached to star in a remake of the 1990 Kurt Russell classic Backdraft.
Which I did not know when we did that deep dive just recently.
So this is what his career is now, I think, is that he is like jumping into these 1990s nostalgia boner movies like Twister and Backdraft and is having a moment in them.
And you said something about Running Man?
Yeah. So he's also going to be in the Running Man remake, which I think is going to be good because Edgar Wright is doing it.
Okay. There
you
go.
know, so I think it'll be fine. But we have some patrons who have some very pointed things to say about Glenn Powell.
Yeah, Glazed Donut over on Patreon said, I need them to stop trying to make fetch happen. And by fetch, I mean Glenn Powell. And then several people agreed, and including myself.
I disagree, however, because I think that he's dreamy.
Okay, well.
I mean, I don't think that, I mean, he's not a terrible actor either.
No.
I think he's okay. I think he's cute. And I really like Scream Queens when it was on TV. So, I mean, I don't know. To each their own.
Stop trying to make fetch happen, Robert.
I will never stop trying to make Glenn Powell happen, I guess. I don't know. Happen in front of me.
Happen in my mouth.
Come for me.
Coming soon.
We have a whole slew of trailers to talk about, including The Deliverance, which is going to be on Netflix starting August the 30th. Now, this has a lot of big names attached to it.
Right, including Andra Day, who was up for Best Actress, I believe, at some point.
That's right.
Monique, who was also up for, I guess, Best Supporting and won.
She won.
Yeah. And Glenn Close, who no one's ever heard of.
That's right. Who? Whom? Glenn Close, who has been nominated for the Oscar many times and never wins. But this is also directed by Lee Daniels. So, a fantastic director. And I am very much interested in this movie. It seems really creepy and really possession-y.
Right, but they're holding it very close to the vest here because I don't really know what this movie's about.
I don't either.
Which is good.
However, this year, everything seems to be about religion, right? Religious horror is like some of the best horror movies that we've seen this year.
Well, we talked about disaster movies being a reaction, you know, and of like the public collective unconscious, right? And horror movies are kind of like that, right? So it's like we have all this stuff with Roe v. Wade happening and all these other things, and with the religious right kind of making a comeback in government and politics. And guess what? We get things like The First Omen and Rosemary's Baby prequel and The Deliverance and
Immaculate. I mean, like,
right. And then there's another one called like The Front Room, and you know,
there's a lot of religious horror that's coming out, and this movie just looks exceptionally well made. Lots of good acting talent in it. Very, very good director. So I am looking forward to this very, very much.
Next up, we've got something called Monster Summer, which is in theaters in October, I believe. And this is starring Mel Gibson, and it looks like a Stranger Things clone. Other than that, it doesn't really look that, like, spectacular. I don't know. It's a little weird because it's Mel Gibson, for sure.
Yeah.
They don't show any... They're leaving it a little ambiguous whether this is actually, like, supernatural or not. It seems like it is.
I would imagine so.
You know, there's a little bit of like some lens flares happening sometimes and like some bright flashes of things. But who knows? So it could be really, really good. But the trailer isn't really doing it much of a favor because it really is just kind of giving me that Stranger Things like wannabe vibe.
Yeah, it really seems like a gateway horror version of It, right? We have all these kids.
Or the Black Phone even.
Yeah, it's like the summertime. They're all banding together. There's a creepy person who's helping them, and there are monsters abound. It's just like a gateway version of It mixed with Love and Monsters, except, you know, doesn't look very good. And also, if you're going to have a movie that has the word monster in the title and is about monsters, probably give me just a tiny glimpse of the fucking monster.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm looking at. You know,
or that like a fingernail going scraping across a door frame or something. I mean, I know what it is, you know.
It doesn't even seem like a horror movie, really.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
Or not. However, or not is not going to be an option when talking about The Substance, which is the next trailer we're here to talk about. Lots of big names in this one too, like Demi Moore and Dennis Quaid. And this movie is directed by the woman who directed Revenge.
Ooh.
Yeah, over on Shudder. So, like, super looking forward to this. The buzz out of Cam.
This is going to be batshit, and I love it. And that makes me feel like it can be batshit, but still have a really good narrative, straight, understandable story, like Revenge, right? And that was batshit.
Completely batshit.
But still super, like, accessible.
This woman...
I'm looking forward to this even more now.
Knows how to make a fucking movie. Yeah. And I am super excited for this. Like, everybody who watched it at Cannes just came out saying, like, the best things. And so I kept waiting for this to hit streaming. And they're doing a theatrical release.
Is it too late or too early to say, what a great year for horror? I don't know.
No, I mean, because
certainly compared to last year.
If you were to ask me in like April or May if this was a great year for horror, I would have said like categorically no.
Yeah.
I was like, this is another 2023. But like as the year is going on, like they were really holding things to come out.
Yeah, well, it's generally speaking, like the beginning of the year is always like the graveyard of horror movies, where horror movies go to die, right? And as the year goes on, they get better and better, right? Sometimes. But we started getting like a plethora of good ones mid-year, which is kind of interesting. So,
because
we'll see if they still get just as good or better.
I mean, that's true because we haven't seen The Substance yet. You know, we haven't seen Deliverance yet. But I mean, like the movies, they've got a lot of good buzz going for it. I mean, if you throw like the phrase body horror around in a trailer like this, then I will definitely like it'll pique my interest. But I mean, Demi Moore looks great in this. I really you can tell where the message is going based upon like wanting to perfect your body and things like that. And I think that is like sort of like perfect for today to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to it.
Next up, we've got Agatha All Along, which is, of course, the kind of sequel spin-off to WandaVision over on Disney+, which is about the witch Agatha Harkness, played by Catherine Hahn, who is a fan favorite over on WandaVision, including myself. And they've brought along Patti LuPone and Aubrey Plaza to join her coven. And this trailer actually looks very horror-esque, extremely horror-esque.
Yes.
It is horror. And this is coming September 18th.
So I've got to sit down and watch WandaVision, which I have wanted to do. You know, there are things that I know I could watch like in one day. And I feel like WandaVision is that.
Yeah, because the episodes get shorter and shorter, I think. Or longer
and so
longer and longer, actually. Sorry.
But I mean, they're still like reasonably short.
Yeah, because the beginning, it's like the sitcom from the 50s. And it was 20 minutes. And then it's like 30, 40, you know. And it goes to like the Roseanne years. It's fun just to watch from that standpoint. Not even them, like just to see them do it from a production standpoint. It's just fun.
But this looks like a straight up horror series. And like the whole time we were watching it, I was kind of smiling. My mouth was open a little bit. I was like, this is going to be on fucking Disney. Like it looks like a horror show.
Well,
I'm here for it.
The Disney in-jokes and Deadpool and Wolverine was just next level.
Fuck. Okay.
And it's just insane. You have to see that movie.
And I feel like I have to see this as well. So I feel like come September or October, where we're doing Shooting the Flames, we'll probably have some sort of mention about this. And I need to watch WandaVision. Finally, we have an Interview with the Vampire update. So season 3 has, is happening, and they seem to be moving along in the novels. And over at Comic-Con, they released a teaser, sort of Meet the Vampire Lestat, leading into it.
Right. I'm guessing this is 2025 because I just finished watching season 2. Like I feel like season 2 ended I was a little late to the party, but I feel like it was still fairly recent.
Yeah.
Right. And for them to already have something filmed and teased and already have music ready to release, because they released some music from Rockstar Lestat in this, and it's kind of Rocky horror.
It is,
and it's worth it. It's worth it seeing how naturalistic this actor is and how good at Lestat he is. And season 1 of Interview with the Vampire, I said, was one of the best things to come out that year. And although it was a little contentious and I was a little worried about some of their choices and how slow it was moving, but I have to say, one of the best things this year, or in years on TV, besides The Terror, was season 2, in my opinion. Season 2 of Interview with the Vampire was amazing. And I certainly by the end. And it just builds and builds and builds, and it's just done really, really, really well. Highly, highly recommend this. Definitely move it to the top of your list, because it will be making its way onto my top 10, just as I always try and put one TV thing, I think, at this point on my top 10s for the year. And this is definitely going to be there. Super important, like not only for a horror standpoint, but for a gay standpoint.
And that's where it gets me,
and for people of color.
That. Yes. And I don't know. I really like the novel, The Vampire Lestat, right? Because I think it's just cool. I'm silly sometimes, but I think it's a really good entry. And I stopped reading those novels after a while into that series, but like
most people drop off with The Tale of the Body Thief.
I think that was the last one that I read, actually. So, but this looks really cool. And you're right. The music does sound very Rocky Horror-esque. I feel like they're continuing on with that sort of like queer mentality, you know, that the series, at least at what you told me, has kind of in spades. And I don't know, it seems really interesting. So I'm down for this. I'm down for all of it.
Good.
I just need to sit down and do it.
You need to catch up.
I know.
So we can talk about it.
I need to like lock myself into a room and just watch it. Although it'll still take me multiple days. So anyway, it'll happen.
You promise?
I think that just about wraps up this episode of Shooting the Flames, this special anniversary edition of Shooting the Flames. As always, we need more comments and questions and such for future episodes. You can find us on social media at The Film Flamers on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the things.
Yes, and you can also email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com. Maybe, if we can get it fucking working again.
Fingers fucking crossed.
But you can always call our hotline, 972
666
7733. Oh.
King Sperm. I don't know.
We're bad at this. 6 years in, we're bad at this.
I don't know. We didn't really get a twister. Maybe we just need naders.
Take a shot.
Do it. We have a lot of content coming out for you on the main feed this month. We are going back to the J-horror and the American remakes of it all and talk about The Grudge.
And Ju-on over on Patreon.
So stay tuned for all that. And to get all the bonus episodes and older episodes that people have been commenting on as of late, thank you, Nikki. Head over to patreon.com/thefilmflamers. Join the family. Participate in the chat, participate in the polls, and get all that bonus content.
Well, Robert?
Yes, Chris?
I need to evacuate. I was going to borrow a twister.
We're just going to use the twister lines for every episode from now on. And once you evacuate, you'll probably have some sweet dreams. You mean like The Room, or I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to go brown.